850 years ago, these drums sounded the beat to one of the greatest empires the world has ever seen, in a land that's witnessed some of mankind's darkest moments, Cambodia. G'day, I'm Robert Hagan, and I'm here to capture on canvas a bridge to link the glorious past of Cambodia to its present.
A splash of colour in the air, nature's palette everywhere. All this beauty we can share in our world. Catch the moment in your hand, from every corner of this land. Breathe it in and understand in colour. We travel far, we travel wide, desert, ocean, mountainside. Cover up the grey outline with a splash of colour in.
Well, there you go, just about gridlock time. Apparently in Cambodia, this time of the afternoon, this sort of traffic occurs. It's dense and it's heavy. But I'll tell you what, it's a lot safer than it was back in the 1970s when that madman Pol Pot and his maniac mates, the Khmer Rouge, wreaked havoc across this country. But I didn't come here to hear any more horror stories from that evil lot. I came here to find out about the Khmer kings of 1,000 years ago. Those godlike kings who reigned over Southeast Asia and built the most stunning temples the world has ever seen. The fabulous temples of Angkor. Angkor, one of the greatest archaeological sites on the planet, that dates back as far as 1,200 years ago to the first god king, Jayavarman II, the founder of the Khmer Empire. There's about 1,000 rediscovered ancient monuments and temples all around here, including the magnificent Angkor Wat, said to be the world's largest single religious monument. The Khmer kings ruled their vast empire from here at Angkor, from the 9th century to the early 15th century, and then it all went belly up. What I'm curious about is why this empire rose and then why it collapsed, and what life was like under the Khmer kings. I came here to do a painting, and I'm going to do a painting, but I need answers to those questions. Otherwise, my painting effort will be like a half-baked cake. Believe it or not, but in the early 1970s, I used to be a history teacher back in Australia, and I've always been fascinated by the incredible history of Cambodia's Angkor temples and how they got swallowed up by the jungle and virtually vanished for hundreds of years. By the way, about that emotive word Khmer, it's not evil in itself. It's just a traditional ethnic name for the Cambodian people. Just thought I'd better clear that one up. The secrets of the Egyptian pyramids and the way that the ancient Egyptians lived were revealed by the pictures and hieroglyphics carved in the walls and pillars. And that's the way it is at Angkor temples. Thousands of square feet of wall space with carved pictures covering all facets of ancient Khmer life. A birth assisted by midwives, the great battles, the fishermen in their boats, the market traders, and even the exotic dancing girls of the palace. These beautiful young girls were called Apsara, and they wore glittering gold headdresses and silken costumes. One king alone had 3,000 Apsara girls on call in his palace to dance for him whenever he liked. Makes Hugh Hefner look small time, doesn't it? You know what saddens me about all this marvellous work here is that it seems that my ancient fellow artists weren't high enough on the social scale to be even allowed to sign their works. Could you imagine if all those superb paintings of the 19th century in Europe were never signed? We'd never know anything about Monet and the richness of Degas and Renoir and so on. It'd be like watching a game of football with just one side on the field. It'd be useless. There's more than 1,000 temples down there, covering some 60 square miles. The first one was built in the year 802 AD. Over the next 500 years, more and more temples to the gods sprung up over a vast area because the Khmer kingdom was totally dominating Southeast Asia. At one point, in the middle of the 13th century, the population of just one of Angkor's cities hit 1 million. And about half the population were slaves captured from neighbouring states like Thailand and Vietnam. Their power was so great that they dominated their neighbours and extended the empire to include just about all of Thailand, Laos and Vietnam for most of that time. The slaves were forced to build all the huge temples. With the whips constantly cracking on their backs, they would have carried the heavy stone blocks for the enormous sculptured faces we see all around here. To support all these people, Angkor must have had a booming economy. But the question is why and where'd it come from? I reckon I saw part of the answer in that balloon up there. To start and run an empire, you've got to have food, and plenty of it. Angkor sat on one of the biggest natural food bowls in the world, Tonle Sap, or the Great Lake, and back then this was just teeming with fish. This region gets soaked every year by the monsoons, and when this happens, the flow of the Mekong River reverses, and the waters push back up into the lake, increasing it to almost 10 times its normal size, making it the largest freshwater body in all of Southeast Asia. Life today is much the same as 800 years ago for these lake dwellers living on houseboats. Every boat seems to be some type of activity, serving food, a fruit stand, a general store, a school, a health clinic, all floating. But the economics are the same. Fishing and shrimp harvesting and everyone's daily activity is aligned to these, from youngest to oldest. Apart from the plentiful fish, the surrounding land is inundated annually with water and enriched with alluvial soil. Today, as with centuries earlier, that meant fertile land for farming. Rice paddy fields thrived. One of the early kings even realised the benefit of water conservation and dug out a reservoir to irrigate thousands of acres of surrounding farmland. The kings also built canals, moats, dikes and tanks. And this enabled 3, even 4 crops of rice a year. There was plenty of food, even for a population of 1 million. And along with a booming economy went even more power and greater expansion. The conquering of neighbour states, more slaves captured, and more wealth. A Chinese envoy visited here in the 13th century and described the splendour he witnessed. He saw endless decorative carvings, painted woodwork, golden spires, golden towers, golden bridges, and golden, well, just about everything. So why did the Khmer kings build all these temples? Well, at the start, they were in homage to the gods, apparently. Before the influence of Buddhism in Cambodia, the first kings built temples dedicated to Hindu deities. Angkor Wat is the centrepiece and greatest of these. Built by King Suryavarman II in the 12th century, it covers an area of 500 acres and reaches 700 feet at its highest point. Its 5 towers represent the 5 peaks of Mount Meru, the mythical home of the Hindu gods. It's a massive place, and there's as much stone here as was used to build the Great Pyramids of Egypt. These temples are wrapped up in mythology, astrology, cosmology, just about every ology there is. This outer wall here represents the mountains at the edge of the world, and the moat, the oceans beyond that. The causeway over there, lined with the serpents, means that you're now leaving the world of man and entering the world of the gods. Very compelling stuff for ordinary citizen Joe. Compelling stuff indeed. But believe it or not, it's not what I want to feature in this painting. So what about this place? These heads are decorations for the Bayon Temple, which is inside the walled city of Angkor Thom. This was larger than any walled city in Europe at the time, and this is the Angkor city that held 1 million people. But all these disembodied heads, 220 of them, yikes! I've been reliably informed it's not one of the Hindu gods, but a king by the name of Jayavarman VII, not to be confused with Jayavarman II, who was one very active king and builder that preceded him. Jayavarman VII played a very different role in the whole Angkor story, as we'll find out later. He started his reign at the end of the 12th century, and the first thing he did was to save the empire by winning a great battle against the Vietnamese. Then he set out on a frenzied building program, erecting major temples all over Angkor. Most of them are still standing today. It is absolutely magnificent, but the problem for me is, as an artist, can I paint this broadly? Can I really do something with this as a painting subject? And the answer to that is no, I can't. It's simply too complex. It's too big a mass. I need to compress this down to something which clearly has the elements of Angkor. It has the fundamental basic shapes and the storyline built into it. I need something smaller than this so I can compress these elements and then get a painting. I don't want at this stage to attempt to paint an entire picture of Angkor. That may come later or it may not. The splendour and magnificence of Angkor lay in its sheer size, the immenseness of this place. That vastness makes up the whole. Each motive, each bas-relief, each statue is representative of the very soul of this place. That's what I want to capture, and I found it in this perfect little spot, along with this carving of the image of King Jayavarman VII. This is the place, yes, this is the main entrance to a temple called Ta Som. It may be an entrance, but it bore witness to everything that Angkor was. Through this moved the people that lived under the kings. It was a glittering, crowded and wealthy city from 1150 to 1300. Slaves were chained at the neck with punishment by mutilation or burial alive. Common people, and that was about 90% of the population, dressed with just a cloth around the waist and lived in wooden houses without chairs or tables. Women did all the trade work, apart from the pretty ones who were singled out for the royal court. The rich and powerful lived in wooden houses, but in splendour and opulence. They wore perfume and elaborate jewellery on the neck, arms, wrists and ankles. Angkor City was a wooden city, about the size of Los Angeles, believe it or not, and dissected by moats and waterways. Getting around was by oar-propelled boats, carts, elephants and horses. But the big event in town was the royalty. When the king went out, he went out with great pomp and ceremony. Palace women decorated in flowers with candles. private guards armed to the brim. Princes and nobles on elephants, followed by hundreds of wives carrying gold-flecked red parasols. Then the king, standing on his elephant with his sacred sword held high. Captivating stuff indeed. One of the most dynamic expressions of nature here, apart from the dramatic expression of man in these monumental buildings and temples, is the banyan tree. That parasitic tree that simply takes control of the host tree and then spreads its roots like tentacles over the walls and the entrances and so forth. So it really just symbolises the passage of time and the inevitable encroach of nature upon the structure. That must go in the painting. And nowhere in Angkor would you find better examples of these magnificent trees than in Ta Prohm, built again by Jayavarman VII in honour of his family. Just about everywhere you look, these roots snake through the ruins like tentacles, giving them the casual name, the strangler fig. It's hard to imagine at one time 80,000 people were assigned to the temple's upkeep. Ta Prohm has been left in very much the same condition in which it was found, and it has become one of the most visited and photographed temples in all of Angkor. One photographer I met who just can't stay away from this place or Angkor itself is Dave Parkes, a British photographer who has now made Siem Reap his home. He's spent some considerable time photographing the temples and its people, and has over the years been fortunate to see some of Angkor's hidden secrets. And your most important instrument
is the camera. Absolutely, yeah. I couldn't be without it.
No, and you're extraordinarily good at it too, I've got to tell you that.
Thank you very much.
And you're living a dream, you're here in Cambodia and you love photography and you love empires. True?
Yeah, that's right.
Show me this little gem that you found.
Yeah, one of the fantastic things about Angkor is not always the big sites, it's sometimes the smaller ones. And I'll show you an absolute
Show me the gem. This little thing, what is it? It's a face? What does it represent?
It's a face of an Apsara dancer that's just been obscured by this huge tree root. And it's incredible that it's actually still there. It feels as though it's actually protecting the figure.
Well, nature's just grabbing the building back, but I mean, and that smile, there's that enigmatic smile that's characteristic of all the sculptures around here.
Absolutely wonderful.
Your photography is absolutely fantastic. You've captured not just the mass, but the human part of the whole experience here. Is it an experience for you, or is it just something to look at, or is it a total experience?
I've never lost the joy and excitement of coming places like this. Even though I've been here more times than most tourists would ever think about going, I still get a real excitement out of it. I think that my photography has developed in a manner of speaking because I spend my life taking photos here, and the opportunities here have been quite incredible.
And this is, well, to me it's a gem.
I know, it's one of my faves.
This is the gem. I mean, it's symbolic of the entire experience here, the age, the time, the message, and nature. Nature will eventually claim it back, unfortunately. Well, as I reach the end of this stage of the painting, that missing element to bridge the past with the present is so obvious to me now. Seeing Dave's photographs made me realise that as well as the temples and monuments that have survived the centuries, so too have the monks of Angkor. I mentioned earlier about Jayavarman VII playing an important role in the whole Angkor story. Well, unlike all the Angkor kings before him, he was a Buddhist. And boy, that started a whole new ball game around here. Switching to Buddhism was the beginning of the end for the kings of Angkor. Because of the sacking of Angkor in 1117 by the Vietnamese, Jayavarman VII lost faith in the protective powers of the Hindu gods that had been the basis of the entire religion, and adopted a form of Buddhism that renounced violence and espoused pacifism. As a result, when the Thais attacked in 1431, the Khmer, after over 300 years of passive living, offered little or no resistance, and the place was sacked. The Siamese looted the buildings and marched away countless thousands back to Siam to work as slaves. So with the temples now completely abandoned, except for just one, Angkor Wat, the jungles gradually engulfed them to the point where they simply disappeared. And they weren't rediscovered until the 1860s, when the French colonists came here and started hacking away at the jungle growth. Can you imagine the jaw-dropping shock they got when they realised what was underneath it all? The monks at Angkor practice the same version of Buddhism that's practiced throughout most of Asia. The one and only time they left the temples of Angkor in the past 800 years was when they fled the country to escape the Khmer Rouge rage of terror in the 1970s. The communists tried to destroy Buddhism and almost succeeded. When the Vietnamese invaded in 1979, nearly every monk had been either murdered or driven into exile. Today, the religion is struggling to re-establish itself, but the lack of Buddhist scholars is making that difficult. So the monks, for me, are the vital element that's missing in this painting, because they were fundamental to the unravelling of the Angkor Empire. And for me, their presence in the painting provides a bridge for the Angkor that once was to the Angkor we know today. And this gives my painting soul and completes my intended story in the painting. Buddhism to me is a very gentle religion. It's a spiritual base that sort of spreads itself out with calmness and order. It is definitely non-violent, and so it can never be the basis for an aggressive empire. And I feel when I'm in a Wat or with monks around me, I feel that certain sense of order and passivity. It relaxes me, quite honestly. And I feel a strong empathy towards that religion myself, simply because it is tolerant, it is passive, it is understanding. It's got all those qualities of good order and common sense and sensible living. What thrills me to bits about this painting is the colour of the monks. That saffron, the robe that they wear, that orange, simply glows in the sun. And it gives this painting energy, it gives it life, it gives it vibrancy. So to me, it's a happy colour amid the greyness of the statue, of the entrance, which harkens back in time. That gives this energy and gives it bounce and gives it that lift that we need to say we're here today, but we're painting the past as well. One thing that I find fairly incomprehensible is how can you find such a passive and gentle people within a society that's been parallel with violence? How can you find majestic monuments amid such poverty? How can you find people that have got such a rich history, yet such a tragic recent past? The one thing impresses me, though, is the stirring of hope, is the quiet achievement that I read in the faces of the monks and of the people as they go about their business here. This is a land of rejuvenation. It's been ravaged, it's been belted around for centuries. But I've got to tell you, these people are tough, they're hard, and they're going to do the distance. Well, if you need proof of going that very distance, then look no further than the Angkor Association for the Disabled. I said I wasn't going to talk about the evils of Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge, but it's hard to spend a day in Cambodia without being reminded of that. Dave, the photographer, introduced me to a most remarkable friend of his, Sam Savata, the founder of this organisation, who lost both legs to a landmine in 1990, and like many, was forced into begging. He finally escaped this trap through sheer determination and has ever since been helping others to do the same. The members of this association work together producing handicrafts and offering a variety of services, as well as teaching new skills to new members, and of course performing and selling music at the Angkor temples. Their message is clear: they do not beg, they only wish to work. You know, you can't erase human spirit. Destruction, inhumanity, hardship will all impair it. But it will always fight back. Painting, sculpturing, music and dancing are all activities that heal the human spirit. The landmine victims that I saw earlier are testament to humanity gone completely mad. But they're also testament to the power of the human spirit to fight back and say, I want my life back. Well, let me say this. If that human spirit that I saw was at the base of the greatness of Angkor 1,000 years ago, then these people really don't have too much to worry about. And they are fighting back, don't get me wrong, but they really do deserve a good break. All right, that's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. Better sign it now. Something that my fellow artists couldn't do, remember. And a bit of Angkor sunshine from my mum. There you go, Mum. Okay, let's have a look with a frame around it, see how it looks. Oh, that's not bad. I might hang that in the house. I won't throw it in the garden shed. Listen, if you like this style of painting and you want to find out more about Angkor, check us out on the internet. It's all there. Hey, there's my taxi. I'm Robert Hagan, and I'll catch you next time on A Splash of Colour. Bye.